We can fast forward 16 years to where I am now. I've now done a TEDx talk about honoring your irrational impulses, right? That irrational impulse to do comedy was the first time I said yes to myself. It changed my entire life and trajectory. And I'm the best-selling author of Revolutionary Woman, a book to help women not be subjugated by the fact that the patriarchy will continually punch them in the face.
Yeah.
And so that's me.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hirsch Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Super buttoned up here on Yes Brand. Welcome to another episode of Yes Brand. And who better to have in the hot seat today than Shereen Thor? Shereen is a rehabilitated comedian who has become the best-selling author of Revolutionary Woman, a TEDx speaker who's shared the stage with the likes of Serena Williams, Prince Harry, Pau Gasol, and Les Brown. She's been featured in Forbes and Wall Street Journal, Spike TV, and all this other stuff. But we don't want to load you up with a lot of accolades and accomplishments. We just want to welcome her to the stage here on Yes Brand. So please welcome, put your hands together give it up for Shereen Thor.
Thank you. I'm just going to be awkwardly silent. I'm waiting for the applause. Where's the applause?
Yeah, I don't have the applause button on demand. And in fact, it would be really cheesy if I did do that. What I could do is do what we experience more in open mics. It's that thing where there's one or two people there,
Yeah. Woo! Yeah, there you go.
You got this, girl.
And then you're like alone and afraid on a stage. Yes.
You got this, girl.
No, but honestly, you did that so well. I mean, that's why
Thank
I expected the applause, because we literally could have been at a show with the way you just pumped me up. I was like, "Oh, I'm ready. Let's go." Hirsch.
That's right.
Let's
Well,
go.
so that served the purpose. Okay, so we obviously have a lot in common, but we don't know each other that well yet. So that's fun for the audience and for us. So let's jump into where you're at right now. If we were trapped in an elevator and you had one floor in which to kind of give it all, in a nutshell, in a capsule version. And I said, so what is it who is Shereen Thor?
Who is Shereen Thor? Well, born and raised in Pasadena area, California, daughter of an immigrant from Egypt. So, a whitewashed brown girl, if you will. Just kind of had all those immigrant parent expectations, that immigrant parent unconditional love that was being doled out. And I was like, "Ooh, I want to get some. I'm going to be what you need me to be." And so I tried. I went to college, even though I didn't really want to. And instead of majoring in philosophy or art like I would have loved, I'm like, I'll major in something normal, right? Because I want them to love me. I'll do communications. They want me to be an engineer. I'd rather blow my head off. I'll just do communications. It's a happy medium.
That's
so
a good one.
Thank you.
Communications is a good word. It's a good word. I don't know what kind of, career. I also have had probably a career in communications. I don't know what it really means, but okay.
Well, you communicate well. So whatever degree you got, check, it worked. Graduated, got my first job, 3 months in, was sexually harassed. So, it was a great time. Entering the workforce and the patriarchy was just like, bam, punch me in the face. Yeah. I just had this office, and this guy walked in and he closed the door behind him.
Good sign, right? Good sign. And not a lot of options after that.
Yep. He closed the door behind him. And I was sitting at my desk, and he hovered over my desk. And told me that if I didn't lose my attitude, he was going to bend me over that desk and spank me.
Oh my God. So
God.
give us some context for the job, what the job was like, how big the company, like.
Yeah, I mean, so I was the client manager. It was like a company that did advertising for small to mid cap financial companies. I was a client manager and he was a sales guy. So the sales guys would like sell a deal of advertising stuff, and then they'd hand it off to me, and I would kind of like manage it and make sure everything happened internally. And I don't know, he didn't like my attitude. So I'm like a little 23-year-old child who just graduated college and just like, what just happened? And so I ended up, my friends were like, that was sexual harassment. Like, well, I guess it was. Okay. I was so green. I didn't even know what the hell's going on. So I tell my boss, he's very upset, and he goes and tells his boss, he's very upset. So it's like the president and the CFO. And then the two of them went to the CEO, and they told him what happened. And then the three of them pull me into a meeting. I'm sitting there, you know, a child just out of college looking at these three grown dudes.
Yeah.
And fully expecting to be supported and protected because of the response my direct boss had. He was really upset for me. And he was like, oh, no, that's not okay. But the CEO just kind of looked me in the face and he goes, he was just joking, right? And I pause, right? And I pause. I'm holding back tears. He's like, I mean, you can still work with him, right? And I just like, through the desire to cry, just uttered the words, yes. Because the desire to be a good girl who doesn't make a fuss and receives that conditional love is incredibly high programming, right? And like your early 20s, you're like a kid still. You're just doing what you were taught to do, right? So I stay at this job for 1.5 years. And every day that I get ready and drive into this job, I feel a shred of my dignity leave me. Like I just feel like I am letting people treat me like trash, which I was. But at the time, it seemed like the most reasonable thing to do, right? Like my friends, family were like, well, you know, you just got this job. You don't want to like jump around. Your resume is going to look choppy. So, you know, I just stayed. Luckily, I had a friend who nagged me to go to a personal development seminar. I went to this seminar and I didn't want to go. I was like asking for my money back. And I was very like reluctant to stay. I was like, this is cheesy. This is for people who need help. Like, I don't need this. But it ended up being the most incredible thing for me because at the seminar, I kind of realized or finally became conscious to how much I was deferring my life choices to what other people would approve of instead of just like being my actual self. And so I swiftly left that seminar and began the process of awakening to who I actually am. And I quit a master's degree and I started doing stand-up comedy. So that's like the beginning of my story. We can fast forward 16 years to where I am now. I've now done a TEDx talk about honoring your irrational impulses, right? That irrational impulse to do comedy was the first time I said yes to myself. It changed my entire life and trajectory. And I'm the best-selling author of Revolutionary Woman, a book to help women not to be subjugated by the fact that the patriarchy will continually punch them in the face.
Yeah.
And so that's me. I just coach and I speak and I write, and that's the deal, Hirsch. That's
the great kind of energy that you have, the laughter and that stuff. What I have a feeling, and you tell us, you know, if I'm on point here, I have a feeling that had kind of gone away during that period of working, you know, in that circumstance, amongst, you know, assholes like that, you know, and honestly, you know, in a system that punches you in the face, which is a great, hopefully it's not literal in cases, but it's pretty damn close, you know, and certainly in terms of the emotional trauma that people undergo, that during that time, it probably was harder to be so effervescent and positive, right?
Yes, bullseye, you intuitive man, you. I was incredibly depressed. I was I would say like losing hope and faith in humanity in general. Just the way things had gone personally and professionally. I just felt very disappointed. I just felt very left hanging. I always felt like I would go super far for friends and they wouldn't necessarily meet me halfway. Obviously, professionally, I didn't feel like I was treated well. So it was definitely a really dark time, which I am not in any way, shape, or form in that space now, but it is helpful that I had that experience, because now when a client comes to me and they're really unhappy in their job and they're really feeling unmet in their relationships, I know exactly what's going on and I know that they can change their life, So
Yeah.
yes, you're on point. It wasn't as fun back then. No.
And who are you working with mostly, or who do you enjoy working with mostly?
Yeah, I do coach both men and women, but I find that it's usually women who either want to start a passion project, right? Women who have kind of a creative streak or a desire to have a service-based business, or executive women who are experiencing burnout and maybe have a fear of conflict. And so I kind of help them bump up their confidence and communication and their leadership. So the ladies.
What's crazy is, how as a society, we make all these strides and then we like take these huge jumps backward, like we're like almost like a stretch toy that, you stretch it, you pull out into a reasonable shape, and then it just kind of like snaps back into the same old bullshit that it did before. Have you watched Succession, the show Succession?
You know what? I started it, but I haven't gotten super far in it. So I have context, but I haven't watched it.
Okay, so you have a little context. I mean, it's a phenomenal show, but one of the lead characters who's one of the children, the Roy kind of heirs. Shiv, the character, is played by Sarah Snook, who's a brilliant actress. So the character is a sister competing with brothers to succeed the father, and everything about her character, because the beautiful thing when you play characters over seasons is that you get to see the character either evolve, or at least you see different colors and sides. And it is never, there isn't a scene or an utterance that isn't influenced by the patriarchy and the challenges that she faces just by being a woman. So if you made a reel of exchanges that happen in there and successes and failures in this battle that she has, you would probably be like just shell-shocked by the overarching nature of it. So it's powerful, and I recommend to everybody to watch the whole show as many times as you possibly can. It had the same effect on me that Mad Men had, because with Mad Men, I think I had the context of the ad business and so will you. But I think with Succession, it's more empirical, because even though these people are heirs to billion-dollar fortune and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. It might matter to us to have $1 billion, because we might be totally surprised and pleasantly so, and then say, oh, wow, I have all this stuff I didn't have yesterday. But when you're born with it and you believe you have a birthright to it, as they all do, all of a sudden it changes everything. And granted, the people are kind of abhorrent in a lot of ways, but Jesse Armstrong, the creator of the show, makes them sympathetic to us.
Yeah. That's the genius there.
And that's the genius, is making them sympathetic. What this has to do with our experiences, I think, is that I think there's always two ways to go in these situations. You can be broken by things, or you can be emboldened by things. And clearly you've done the latter, in terms of not only fighting back and saying, I'm gonna choose a different, but literally creating your own path. So what is that like? You say there were 16 years, that have gone by. So yeah, well, I don't know. When you get to be my age, it's not that long. It's like, oh, how long have I known that person? Oh, I've known them 16 years. It'd be like, oh, okay, well, I know this guy 48 years. I don't know what, and it's like, I know this one 52 years. I don't know anybody more than 56 years. That's the longest relationships that I have. And only amazing. With my sisters, my parents who've passed, but still like that. Wow. But that kind of history, when you have history with friends that goes like beyond 40 years, it's kind of weird. It's kind of both everything and nothing at once.
Totally. That's so true. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that from experience. I don't know anyone past 40 years. Oh, that's true. I know my sister and my mother past 40 years. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's everything and nothing. I'm into it. So you were asking about what transpired in the 16 years?
So give us some highlights, some highlights that shaped your road to where you're at.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about a little more where you're at.
So I started with the stand-up comedy, right? And I did the comedy for 2 years in tandem while continuing to get coached and drink the Kool-Aid and go to the retreats and jump off the rope courses, right? So it was kind of like comedy and coaching in tandem. This was like a life-changing experience, getting on the stage, putting a mic to my face and making it matter, my thoughts, my feelings, right? Like, I think that was like big transformative for me.
Where was this? Where?
I mean, everywhere. I did
in LA
improv. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up I was in Pasadena. So,
Pasadena.
I would go to the Comedy Store. I did the Pasadena Ice House. I did the Hollywood Improv. I did the Brea Improv. I did a road trip across the United States of America. I played in Seattle, Boston, Denver, anywhere they would have me. I would go.
And what years was this?
Oh man, ages ago. So I was probably 25. I'm now 41.
Yeah.
So a bajillion years ago, but I did it for 2 years.
Right.
One comedy contest, like it was a jam. And at the end of the 2 years, I actually started to get scouted. I got scouted after a show at the Hollywood Improv. A scout from MTV approached me and was like, "Hey, would you want to come in for auditions, to be a talking head or like a VJ or something?" I was like, "Yes." So, started doing that, auditioning a little bit. Right when I got to that 2-year mark, I started to realize I'm actually not sure that like comedy is the cross I want to die on. I think it was incredible and I loved the adventure of it. I think I needed it to honor my own creativity or desire to say something, right? All that.
Yeah.
But I just found myself not loving being on stage anymore, not really caring if people laughed at my jokes anymore. I sort of like, for some reason, like lost that spark for comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But coaching at that point had changed my life. The safe space that was held by a coach, the non-judgmental space that was held by a coach, I don't have no agenda about who you should or shouldn't be. I'm just actually holding space for what you are and helping you bring that to life. That like completely revolutionized my life, so that taking off of the mask and arising as an authentic person gave me energy, joy, generosity in a way that I had lost, right? So like you asked about how I felt at that down juncture of my life. I was like a shell of myself, like whatever natural effervescent energy I probably was born with. At that point, I just didn't have it. Life just felt depressing and I was depressed, right? So like I broke through that by jumping on a comedy stage. But I think what really transformed me was the work of having a coach and being my authentic self, even as scary. And so I ended up deciding to opt out of comedy and go all in on coaching. And I remember it being like very vulnerable, like, oh my God, am I going to record a video for my website where I actually am saying what I think? That's so vulnerable, right? Because as a comedian, you hide behind a mask of like, being like a funny asshole,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's fun and that's wonderful. And that's part of who I am. I am certainly a fucking funny asshole. Okay. So like, that's true. But I'm also many other things. And those were the things I was uncomfortable sharing because they were vulnerable and they were tender and they were real. And I just wasn't sure if I would still be well received, So anyway, went all in on coaching because it changed my life. And really from there, slowly figured out like, how do I be an entrepreneur? How do I be a philosophical entrepreneur? How do I be an artistic and creative entrepreneur? How do I not like sell my soul to entrepreneurship? Because it's really easy to be obsessed with like algorithms and sales numbers and crap that I don't care about when you're really trying to chase money, which you inevitably end up doing as an entrepreneur. So that took forever. I slowly learned how to have partnerships and contracts where people would send me work and it would be like, I don't have to chase money. I then wrote the book, Revolutionary Woman, about 3 years ago, where I was like, okay, I'm going to finally have the framework of my philosophy of how I believe people make this transformation. It hit bestseller. Shortly after that, I got chosen for that event alongside Serena Williams, Prince Harry, Pau Gasol. And then I just did a TEDx talk a few months ago. So it's like, crescendo, it's all downhill from here, but it went well.
No. Well, what about MTV? Still some possibility there?
No. I'm not a comedian. I feel like that's why TEDx is the correct stage for me at this point. Though I will say I did, for no good reason at all, sign up for a comedy contest recently.
Yeah.
Indy's funniest person contest. I don't know
Mhm.
why I signed up. I think it's because, well, we moved. Okay, so that's part of the 16 years as we were
Yeah.
in California. You know, I met a lovely man. We got married. We made 2 babies. Santa Monica's way too freaking expensive to buy a house. So we moved to the Indianapolis area.
Yeah.
Been here for a year and a half. And yeah, maybe it was the like suburban mom boredom that made me do it. I don't know.
It's funny, Shereen. I think I'm going to check after we're done with the interview. I'm pretty sure you're not me, but it feels like there are so many things that I relate to that it's comforting. But I also feel like I really do understand, like I am empathetic and I understand how a lot of these things felt. Also with stand-up comedy, were you interested in stand-up as a kid or before? Like when did that
That's
light
a good
bulb
question.
go off?
So in high school, people would tell me, "Oh, you should be an actress." And I, without much thought given to it, I would say, "Oh, I'd rather be a comedian than be an actress because at least I could say my own words." I don't know why I thought that. It's just crazy how you know yourself when you're a kid, but you don't know that you know
You
yourself.
forget, you get trained to not be yourself.
Yes, you get trained to not be
Yeah.
yourself. And then I slowly had to like, oh yeah, I used to say that. I forgot I used to say that. Oh, and now I'm doing it. Now I'm a comedian. And I realized like, oh, I have more to say, right? I have more to, there's like a philosophical part of me. There's like, yeah, there's this part of me that wants to like help people change their lives in a powerful way. And I think comedians bring a lot of levity, but they're not necessarily helping anyone change their lives. They bring joy, they bring entertainment, and they might make them think. But I like literally watch people's lives change, right? Through a one-on-one relationship. I'll coach them over the course of like 2 to 4 years, and I'll actually watch their work become better, their life become better, their families grow, and I'll hold them accountable to their vision, right? So it's just a different experience.
Yeah.
I could probably go back to comedy and have some fun there, but I love being able to really help people change their lives for real, you know? So
yeah. And I get what you experienced and what you must have felt when you got that call about MTV. And, you know, there was, when I was 23 or 22 even, and I was doing stand-up comedy in New York, I had opportunities, but I was newly married to my first wife at the time, and we were starting to have a family. And for a long time, I thought I had made a mistake by not going on the road and not doing all these things. And I was kicking myself for years and years. Oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. But if you stop sometimes to think, oh, well, what would have happened had I done it? What are the likely outcomes? And maybe success in comedy is one of them. But, you know, then I realized years later that it wasn't what I wanted. If I wanted it, I would have done it. It just was not. It didn't make sense to me that I wouldn't want it because Isn't it so much fun? Isn't it great? Isn't it wonderful to have, you know, millions of people love your work and all that? And yeah, that all is great, but there's a lot of things you can't have if you choose that, you know.
That's so true.
And in most cases, there's a lot of things you can't hold on to. You got to let go of everything for a good, 10 years. Then you can go, get married, you could have kids, you could have a family, you could be around for your kids. You can do those things, after, but you can't do them at the same time. And so for whatever reason, I also find that in stand-up comedy, there is a barrier. It's funny because when we start doing it, we get up there and we're like, oh my God, it's me and this mic and I can say anything. I can get away with anything as long as I can make them laugh. That is amazing. And it's an amazing feeling. But if you look at most comedians and most people, most actors, anybody who's in front of the cameras or behind the mic, they do feel like, okay, but there's a point at which this is not personal. Even when they're doing crowd work, they're not really doing crowd work and getting to know the person. They're just, they're playing, they're kibitzing, as we would say in Yiddish, they're kind of just playing. I'm just playing with you. I'm just kidding around, but don't follow me home and don't call me and tell me how you're doing, because that just doesn't work in that environment. But for what we do now with podcasting, you're a coach. I'm a consultant. I work with clients. It is personal and accountable. Yeah. And I realized after years and years, I needed that with the client too. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yep.
didn't get that on stage. And we do
Yep.
wear masks, and I was hiding behind voices and characters. And then I got
Mhm.
more personal and dealt with some very, very personal stuff in my comedy. And that was great. But I don't think I would ever go back to being a performer, quote unquote, without the human being and the story behind me of what's going on with my business and what's going on with my work and
Yeah.
what I'm trying to bring to the world. I would always be that person now. I wouldn't be, here's the
Totally.
funniest guy. You heard this
Mm-mm.
funny guy. Here, he's so funny. He's going to make you laugh so hard. That wouldn't do it for me, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. I can completely resonate with that. Maybe we are the same person, Hirsch.
We are. Yeah, but clearly we like to perform. So when you
Yeah.
were doing stand-up, what was yours? I had asked you about when it was because I wondered if we were doing it at the same time, because I got back into it in LA with
That's
some
fun.
friends of mine. I had stopped for a long time. I was working advertising. I was doing other, and I would do it maybe once every 5 years. I'd come up with something I thought was funny, but I gotten back into it like in 2000, I don't know, like 11, 2011, 2012, around there. And
Mm.
I got back into it. I started doing it mostly at all the places in LA, and then went back and did some more in New York, and then started touring a little bit. But then we also moved to Iowa, from LA for the
Mm.
same reasons you moved.
Yeah.
Indianapolis wasn't an option because my wife's not from there. she's
Yeah.
she's from Iowa, so that's where we moved. But it
That
was
makes
like,
sense.
kind of a forced culture shock that I didn't I expected to hate, not to hate it, because I'd been coming to Iowa for years and I really do like the people. I don't love
Yeah.
the winter weather, as anyone who listens to any of my podcasts has heard too much, probably. They're like,
Yeah.
geez, cut out about the weather. God, it's enough. But I'm like, hey, I'm a Miami
Totally.
kid originally. So, but
I mean,
okay,
the sunshine.
I'm talking more than I normally would. I think because I'm really enjoying talking to you, but I don't want to monopolize it. Okay. So tell me a little more about your comedy style.
Well, I did it in 2007 and 2008. So I think we must have just missed each other from like when you got back into it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I would make fun of my mother's accent. I would talk crap on the guys I was dating, but that was about it. I probably had like a solid 10.
Mm-hmm.
I never worked hard enough to get anywhere close to being a headliner. I just like nailed a good like 10 minutes.
Right.
And then I stopped. So the truth is, I think I would be the same as you. Like at this point, getting back into it, and I don't even know if that's what I'm doing. I just, for some reason,
Right.
signed up for this contest. I will do the contest. How I feel when I do the
You
contest.
want to make the other soccer moms feel like shit. That's what you're trying to do.
That's exactly right. You are
That's right.
Yeah. So we'll see how it feels to do it. But part of it is like, there is something fresh. I'm experiencing the culture shock that you're talking about going to Iowa. Same. Like we ended up in this area of the Midwest because my husband's always kind of had family like in Northern Indiana. He grew up in Illinois. So this kind of just made sense.
Yeah.
Culture shock is real. I mean, listen, the truth is though, I was always an oddball in LA. Like in LA, people would be like, oh, you're from New York, huh? Like you definitely have a New York vibe. And I would always be like, I am born and raised here. Like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Like, I am LA. This is me.
Yeah.
Like, this is where,
And
but
what do you
now
mean New York? What do you mean New York? Did I tell you to go fuck yourself, or did I, what was it? What was it that I did? Because I lived there for 13. What is it that I have picked up in New York? Because people would say the same thing to me. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I picked up a little New York accent from living there so long, but like, what is it about me that makes you think I don't give a fuck about you?
Right? Well, exactly. Right. And they would say like, oh, you're blunt, right? You're blunt, or you're straight to the point. So maybe that's what it is with you. But I will say, I never wrapped my mind around it. I didn't think it was accurate until I moved to the Midwest, because in the Midwest, they're like the opposite of New York, specifically Indiana, right? Like everyone's incredibly polite and everyone does not get in each other's business. And it's just not what I'm used to. I'm just used to everyone just being like, here's my opinion, here's what it is, here's what I think. I walk into a grocery store in LA, everyone looks at who just walk in and then sort of like sizes them up, right? Looks them up and down, and then goes back to what they're doing. I walk into a grocery store in Indiana. It's like nobody walked in. It's like they just keep doing what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong either way. Both are fine. But I'm like, oh yeah, it's so different. There's just a different energy here. And I think my point here is, I think that's partially what makes it exciting to get back into comedy. I am a fish out of water here. I don't really relate. It might be fun to embrace that on a comedy stage instead of feeling weird about it, which I have felt weird about it for most of the time I've been here. So, we'll see how that goes.
Well, one place, and I won't say which, but, if you look at Hollywood and Indiana, one place produced Mike Pence and the other place produced Cher. So who, you know what I mean? Who gets, so you probably fall into one of those categories a little more than the other. And I don't know if it's that of the former vice president, just in this case,
No. It's so funny.
And that kind of stuff, but that kind of politeness, that kind of what I picked up in Iowa was a real kind of earthiness, a real grounded, like no pretense, no bullshit.
Yeah.
And I do like that. And that is reminiscent of New York more than LA. But in New York, the fact is they're just really comfortable with telling you the truth. And they don't feel you need to be coddled or, held.
Right. That's exactly right. So true.
And there is some of that in the Midwest. There is some of that, get over yourself. Who cares? Like that Louis Anderson, the mother character that he did in the Zach Galifianakis show. It's like that. Oh, get over it. Why are you worried about it? Oh, for God's sake, just eat something. We like that stuff. But it's fun. Just being real. And now with the book, the experience with the book, was that another new challenge, writing a book? Is that something you had thought about doing?
That's a good question. And actually, I'll give you a really weird answer because it's the best kind, So I did the comedy and tried to do entrepreneurship. I tried network marketing. I even dabbled in real estate. I was like, oh yeah, I read the 4-Hour Work Week and Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have this beautiful life. It's gonna be great. And then I went broke, like broker than broke, like creditors calling me broke, like almost bankruptcy, but actually we're just going to do the credit, like the debt reduction plans you do they just Anyway, the point is it was bad. Yeah. And oh my gosh, it was the worst, darkest time ever. It was so hard. And I just remember finally being like, I just have to go get another job. Like I had eventually quit this job, the bad one where I got sexually harassed and I was trying to entrepreneur. I went back and I started doing sales for Xerox. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not my dream job, God bless Xerox, beautiful company doing good work with some good people, but I'm a creative philosopher artist. I did not want to do sales for Xerox, but you got to do what you got to do when you're trying to build a life. And so I was like, instead of having creditors call me, I'm just going to actually make some money and get myself out of this hole. My first week of training at Xerox, night number 4, I go to sleep on a Thursday night. Now, let me preface this by saying I am great at sleeping. I am borderline narcoleptic. I have fallen asleep at a slot machine in Vegas. That's how good I can sleep. Okay. It's weird.
Well, after how many hours? After how many hours at the slot machine?
Clearly too many.
Oh, still yeah, weird, of course. But still, So that's good. Mm-hmm.
This night, I couldn't sleep. Insomnia, full on, not a wink. I was haunted by the thought, what if I live an ordinary life and never write a book?
Ooh.
Haunted. So this was the first time I realized, apparently I want to write a book, because what was that trash night of sleep? So that was 8 years before my book came out. Mm-hmm. So I kind of sat on that. I actually wrote a little quote book. I was like, I'll just try to be a fakey author, put out this little quote book. And that was cool. It did that. And then in November of 2019, I did a book launch. So sort of like a Kickstarter for books through this thing called Publishizer. And that was okay, I'm taking this seriously. I'm really going to do it. Got people to pre-order copies. worked on the book for 2 years and it came out in 2021. Pandemic, baby. It was a pandemic book.
Ah, interesting. Well, again, I can relate to the fear of what if I don't ever do it. And also the kind of like half-ass, I have so many documents that have mini chapters of imaginary books. It's like I call them imaginary books because I don't know that they'll ever become books. I don't know that I just finished a manuscript for my first book and I didn't really use any of it. Like you would think, oh, I'm going to write about, I'll grab this, I'll grab that. And I'm sure it all helped, but I didn't really use it. I didn't grab it because it wasn't this, but that wanting to do a book and say, you know what, I got to have at least a book out there.
Yeah.
And now you're probably more famous than I am, but I don't know that, but well, I hope so. I hope for your thing. I hope for your self-worth you are. No, we don't base our self-worth on fame. It really is.
It's stupid.
It's so stupid and I want it. So no, I don't. I used to want it. I used to want fame. But I think if you don't think about it, it's a really great thing to want,
Totally.
But in terms of, the gratification of being acknowledged and all that. But when you write a book, you also have this thing of, well, if everybody doesn't know who I am, it really has to be about something. Because it's not going to be enough to be, I'm sharing all my secrets. I'm spilling the tea.
That's right. Nobody gives a shit about our tea.
Hirsch spills the tea is probably not going to. You could do an album, let's say, or another book and call it More Than an Asshole. That would be
that idea.
That might be a good book for you. But anyway, but let's talk about Revolutionary Woman and what's in it.
Okay, let's do it. Chapter 1 is entitled Awaken the Rebel, which is what
Nice.
I did when I quit a master's degree and started doing stand-up comedy, right? I was like willing to stomach disapproval from everyone to honor my own desires. So Awaken the Rebel, be bad is the only way you're going to answer your higher calling is if you actually are willing to honor what you truly want instead of just trying to be everyone else's little puppet, right?
True.
Second chapter is really it's called The Female King. It's about women and how in ancient Egypt, they would become a pharaoh. There were legit kings who were women in ancient Egypt. It's like this weird little microcosm in history that we don't really talk about. Women in Greece, which was nearby, would have to go to Egypt to get educated as a doctor because were not accepted as women into medical school in Greece, right? So they go to Egypt, they get educated, they go back to Greece and dress like a man to practice.
Wow.
For some reason, Egypt was this magical, out of this world place where there was some semblance of equality. And I think it was mostly because their religions had female deities. So it was we see God as male and female. So we see humans who are male and female as equally able to have power, And
Right.
so chapter 2 is I want to plant a seed of hope. Because chapter 1's Awaken the Rebel, yay, go do your thing. But it's also here's some female history about how shitty it's been. So light a fire under that ass bitch because we got shit to do. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is, look, this is not a pipe dream. It's happened before. If it happened before, it could happen again. Let's go, right? How would you act differently in your life if you were a king? You're not the freaking co-pilot of your life. You're the pilot of your life. How are you going to go?
Shereen, was there pay equity in Egypt? Gender, any kind of, how would they manage that?
I mean, even some of the laws were in favor of women because maternity was a matter of fact, while paternity was a matter of opinion. Some of the things even favored women,
Wow.
It's really weird. In ancient Egypt, a lot of women experienced a higher level of equity than women do today in modern. It's weird. So anyway, that's why we talk about Egypt. I'm Egyptian, so just pulling from my history. Right. Chapter 3 is called "Fuck the Joneses." It's all about the science of happiness. Yeah, right. We gotta throw the F-bomb in there. It's about the science of well-being. So the things that actually make people happy, right? Like we think it's going to be fame or money. We think it's going to be a six pack or a love, the love of our life. But this is like scientifically, like, here's what actually makes you happy. It's very simple. If you do these 8 things, you will experience a boost in happiness. So that's what chapter 3 is about. And anyway, on goes the bullshit all the way to the last chapter where I'm trying to help women come together as in a sisterhood instead of brandishing at each other.
Has the book been embraced only by women? Have men read the book and enjoyed it? It sounds great to me. You know,
right. So I'm actually in the process. I'm going to write Revolutionary Man. It will be similar in terms of the content, but for men, I think this book was for women to help them harness their masculine energy, right? Like be the boss of your life. I think a book for men would not help them harness their masculine energy. It would potentially help them harness their feminine energy. And I'm going to ask you, Hirsch, what do you think men would need?
A lot of pictures, probably. Pictures and diagrams and just some very, very explicit turn by turn directions for life.
I like it.
And, you know, maybe say that it was written with a man, you know, or just outright written by a man, and then put on the bottom, you know, with Shereen Thor. But seriously, there is great stuff that you can do with it, and with your kind of persona and your attitude. I think that the humor, I mean, this kind of goes without saying already, but the humor cuts through everything. Humor cuts through everything. It's like we talked about, you know, school before. You know, my teenagers going to school, and it's like, you know, everything can't be fun, but humor cuts through all of the challenges that we face. And I think sometimes we're just, it's just unfortunate that doesn't resolve everything. It would be great if we could resolve everything with humor, but I think you can turn out a book for a male audience that will, you know, like a lot of entertainers and authors who are women, who are able to just put it in perspective and with a sense of humor that doesn't automatically make somebody feel shitty or feel stupid or feel at a loss, you know, for having failed at something. Like, I think that's the worst thing that meant that even, you know, good man will feel like we failed, because most likely we have on some level, you know, we probably failed, and we failed either because of our programming, or we failed. And even in life, we failed because we had these amazing personalities as kids, and then we were trained to do something else. You know, how have you reconciled, or have you, with your family and culture and the expectation that the ancient Egypt aside, but the culture that wanted to put you in a certain box or aimed to limit you?
You know, honestly, I think it's just one of those things where I always felt that, like, the black sheep, and there was really no way to get around that. I was just a big weirdo who, like, thought for myself and wasn't, like, dutiful and religious, and didn't become an engineer or a doctor or lawyer until the TEDx. I, for some reason, feel like maybe because TED is such a widely respected brand and it has, like, some sort of prestige about it, right? I think that's maybe what my mother wanted for me. Oh, she's a doctor. That's prestigious. And that's going to reflect positively on us. So I think because TEDx is, like, so incredible, finally, there was a level of acceptance that came after that I had not received prior to that. So, you know, took a good long while, Hirsch. I was the black sheep for a long time. But I will say, circling back to the man and the book, there is a man who is a past client of mine, who's well over 60 years old, who read the entire book from cover to cover and said it changed his life. So,
wow.
So yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
You know, you could put in your PR materials. I did PR for quite some time. And again, humor always is like the backbone for me, because you take yourself down a little bit to elevate the reader a little and just kind of balance the playing field, and just you're not shitting on anybody. But I thought it might be funny to have that, to say, you know, There, a 60-year-old man read this book cover to cover and said it changed his life. We can't quote him here because in my world, men aren't allowed to speak, but sarcasm and satire are tricky too, because then people, in today's world are like, what are you talking about? Men aren't allowed to speak,
I can't deal with that though. I think like as much as I care about equity and justice and gender equality, and like my next TEDx is going to be about closing the gender pay gap, like I'm into it. I also like really love jokes and laughing and joy. And I just feel like all the caution sucks the joy. Like we can't even poke fun at each other anymore.
Right.
Like how do you relate? I don't even know. Like we just have to be serious and dutiful and like political all the time now? It just feels gross. I can't.
Well, that's the thing that I think helped you maybe is that you embraced your rebel, early on, that black sheep status. You kind of, I earned somehow a black sheep status based on the kinds of things you're talking about, but not by choice. I think I was trying to still, fit for a long time. I was still trying to fit. I didn't feel like I fit. I didn't feel comfortable, but I felt like, but meanwhile, I was doing these other things. I was doing stand-up. I was writing screenplays. I was giving up, the opportunities to, fit in by doing some other things. But still, I got labeled. You're going to get labeled what you are no matter what,
True.
Well, listen, this is great. I would love to do possibly even another part to our interview, and we can talk about what would be in it. But for our audience, before you go, could you share a little advice, a little, you're talking to people who are trying to build their own brands, and they could be personal brands, they could be bigger corporate brands, but still everybody has a keen awareness now of branding. What's your advice, having been through numerous transitions?
Another weird answer coming your way. Keeping it weird here in Indiana. I think that every entrepreneur is on a spiritual path. I believe like you, Hirsch, and me, Shereen, we are doing our soul's work. And in the 3D, it looks like entrepreneurship, right? I'm selling a book or I'm speaking, right? Cool. That's how it shakes out 3D. But I guess what I'm saying here is I feel like there is like a 5D element to every brand and every business and every creative person. And so I think my advice is, what is your soul wanting? Like, just the more you can tune into like what your soul actually wants, the more you are going to be on the correct path, making the correct moves for your specific, unique purpose. And so that's it. Nebulous as it is, that's my thought and that's my advice. And that's also why my TEDx was all about honoring your irrational impulses, because sometimes our soul speaks to us in confusing ways. I had no idea why I wanted to do comedy. And little did I know that comedy was going to be the thing that helped me break out of people-pleasing patterns and move into a more authentic way of living, right? But it was just like a freeway, a bridge I had to take on the way to coaching. I didn't know it at the time. It was confusing to want to quit comedy. But to your point, if I really wanted to keep doing it, I would have, right? Like my soul knew what it wanted. So just keep following those irrational impulses, because your soul is always guiding you to where it's meant to go.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, and
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.